Welcome. I'm Mike Orlowski, and this is Mojo Motivation and Mental Health, where we have conversations that change lives. Before we start, if you're struggling right now with depression, anxiety, thoughts of ending your life, or if your workplace is making you feel that way, please reach out. Call or text 988, the Crisis and Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You're not alone, and you matter. And if this show helps you, if these conversations are making a difference in your life, please subscribe, hit like, and also share this with others because we could really make an impact. Today's conversation is something the construction industry has long struggled to talk about: workplace suicide. My guest is Dr. Colleen Saringer, a keynote speaker, organizational health expert who's worked with global companies for over 25 years. But Colleen isn't just an expert with a PhD, she's construction bred and construction wed. Her parents owned a sheet metal shop, her husband, industrial roofing company. She knows blue collar work from the inside. And here's why this matters. Colleen nearly died from suicide in her late 30s. And when she was 13, she watched her father almost take his life under the weight of running a sheet metal business. Both times it wasn't just mental health, it was work, the conditions, the stress, the culture. Can you relate? I know I can, and I have. We're going to talk about workplace psychosocial risk factors, foreman who rules by intimidation, a workload that hasn't let up in 6 months, the crew that lost 3 guys to suicide and nobody's talking about it. These aren't HR problems, they're safety problems. And if you work in construction or if you lead people in the blue collar industries, this conversation could save someone's life. Colleen, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I was on a podcast the other day and I said, I know that's such a cliche thing to say, but thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited that you're here. We're making a difference, and that's what I feel matters most. Now, your tagline is work is the risk, fixing it is how we prevent suicide. It's a bold statement. Explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, it is a bold statement. And I'll just say, I personally think, again, it's bold because many will say thoughts of suicide, anxiety, depression, all the things, that it's really messy and complicated. And it is, which in other words means that if it's complicated, there's a lot of fingers that are kind of coming into what is impacting us. And one of those things is work. And that's not just me saying that because of past experiences. That's me doubling down on it because of past experience, but also because we have the research that supports it. So there is research out there that tells us, and that was the word that you used in the intro, psychosocial risk factors, which that's a
Hmm.
fancy word. I love to just call them risk factors. I feel like workplace risk factors. I feel like it's just something easier to digest. But
Makes sense.
there are a variety of these risk factors that research has tied to anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, and suicides. And that's regardless or not if a person has been diagnosed with a mental health disorder. And so these are things like high job demand, poor support, low job control, incivility, bullying, harassment, social undermining, environmental conditions such as heat. There's an extremely long list of them that, again, research has tied. And so if we can make adjustments, because I respect that we can't always eliminate all of them, some work is just hard. Construction work is hard, but we can certainly make some adjustments within our workplaces to, I don't know if the word better support, but I'm just going to say change, just to change the way we're going about it to minimize the risk.
That makes complete sense. And it's important that we continue to focus on that. Now, you nearly died by suicide in your late 30s. And as you said, it was because your work environment surrounded you with conditions that hurt people. I've been in some of that as well, so I understand that a bit. What happened? What were those conditions? Because I'm sure others can relate.
Yeah. So I think the best way to explain my situation is, let me go back to these psychosocial or these workplace risk factors, is that when these risk factors are present for an extended period of time. So this is not the one-off of, I had a coworker that treated me poorly.
Hmm.
This is something that has been going on for years on end. And what we have to remember is once we go to a new, so let's say we go to a new workplace, a new job, that clock doesn't reset. It's a
Mm,
continuation.
okay.
So, in other words, when I share this story of where I was at that time, all those years ago, I was in a workplace where conditions of incivility, undermining, ostracism, which I will add, these are newer. These are just like regular behaviors for a lot of people. They're kind of just like under the radar behaviors that just happen, but research is new that actually points us to these risk factors that again contribute to. But anyways, all that to say, for a good 7 years, I was working in a workplace where that type of behavior was the common denominator. It was very cutthroat. It was, we don't want to make sure that individuals are pushed aside rather than elevated. So again, those are things like incivility, ostracism, social undermining, all that stuff.
Hmm.
And so after about 7 years, I left that role, went to a new organization. And again, the clock doesn't reset. If you walk into an organization where that, we'll call it what it is, that culture,
Hmm.
where that is still present, then that is just going to continue to add to all of what was festering, all those feelings that these risk factors start to elevate and
Right.
surface. And so that was it. It was another workplace where I was new to the workplace. And for the first 6 to 12 months, that's what I was experiencing. I
Mm,
wasn't experiencing the welcoming environment that I was told about, that I was sold, if you will, or the we
right.
uplift and we want to see you succeed. I was experiencing the opposite. And so again, it was that continuation, that carry over from the last 7.5 years into a new workplace where it just put the icing on the cake for me.
So it's that great interview process that sold you on a dream, but the dream was not the reality.
Dream was not the reality. And and it's like you can feel that after you get into the dream. You're like, something is
Sure.
off. I can't put
Yeah.
my finger on it, but something is off. Yeah.
And it was the work environment of continued multiple jobs that led you down this path.
So it was one. So I have a tendency to stay. I don't want a job jump. I want to stay where I see opportunity to make that change happen, not just for myself, but for who I'm serving at the time. And so, this was the place that I came from. That was about a 7.5 year. I mean, would I say that it was the full 7.5 years of experiencing that behavior? No, maybe it was
Hmm.
6.5. I was at it for seven and a
Sure.
half, but it takes a minute before you can put words to it. It
Right.
takes a minute before you stop asking yourself, is it me? Am I the problem? Right? Because
Hmm.
I mean, sometimes we are the problem.
Of course.
And then it's right. And then it's going to a
Yeah.
new one and realizing, gosh, this is the same. I just left this. And I wouldn't have. I would have just stayed with the devil I knew.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so it was that kind of continuation, different characters in the play, but that continuation of, we don't want to see you succeed. We
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
aren't going to engage with you. You don't know the language, the inside language that we know, and we're not going to share it with you. We're going to make you
Hmm.
earn it. Like that type
Yeah.
of behavior again is behaviors that we often just kind of dismiss because they're somewhat under the radar, but they're present and people feel them. And it starts to slowly
Sure.
beat you down. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you were in a bad place, struggling. What was the step or what happened to turn that all around for you?
Yeah, so when I share, it's so funny, like even when not funny, haha, but it's funny even when you were reading the intro, it still makes me kind of like it gives me like an uncomfortable kind of jolt when I hear it out loud.
I get
Like
it.
my own
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it still like makes me so when I answer this question, if you don't feel like I got to what you were asking, tell me. So for me, the industry that I've always been in has been an industry that is very focused on your own health and well-being as well as the health of the organization, right?
Hmm.
And
Sure.
I take my health very seriously. And so I personally just was like, if I can't solve for this by way of my physical activity, things that we know can impact you. I'm like, if I can't control this, then there's really no other options for me because what I was thinking at that time was if people found out that me, this leader, this person that's under this umbrella of health, if people find out that I can't figure this out, what are they going to
Hmm.
think of me as their colleague, their counterpart, their person sitting at the table across from them? And so,
Sure.
right. And so was that, and so I avoided therapy. I avoided medicine. And it was that moment that I sat on my couch and had the plan and chose not to because I didn't want my dog to get hurt from the way that I thought about going about things. It was that moment that I said, it's time. It's time to go to the doctor. It's time to try the medicine. It's time to do all of the things that we know can work and stop fighting them.
Right. And it's great that you found that time. That's the most important thing of the whole process is you realize that. And it was interesting. I had a conversation this week with Rachel Druckenmiller, who was in the same boat, wellness position, director of wellness, burned out. Like, how does someone talks about wellness burn out? Right? It's not uncommon. It's far more common than people realize. And working conditions can often trigger and or very heavily contribute to that. So you're not alone, and it's an important topic for others to have heard today. And in that process, then did you leave that job at the same time, or?
No, I stayed. I think so, you know, because for me, and I said this, I kind of brushed over it when I made the comment, but I always like to turn the finger in before I turn it out. So for
Hmm.
me, I wanted to make sure that I did everything I needed to do. For
Hmm.
myself. So again, that
Yeah.
medicine, like everything was so heavy. The clouds, it was just the clouds were heavy. I needed to first see above the clouds, right? So I wanted to, and then of course, I also wanted to navigate and try to figure out, okay, is this the entire organization? Is this just a section of the organization? Because I do believe that I believe we owe it to ourselves to try to figure out, is there an opportunity to kind of rescue within before we immediately jump ship? And so once you're able to gain some of that clarity, I think that gives you that opportunity. So I did stay for quite some time, um, until yeah, I was just ready to go. I had outgrown the organization and started a
Okay.
lot of that stuff had started to resurface again. I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah. Like, no, I don't need this road again.
Yeah, I'm fully clear now.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
And then, back in time even further, when you were 13, you said you watched your dad struggle under the weight of running the sheet metal shop, and he believed taking his life was the only way out. How is that? And I don't have that experience. How was that feeling as a 13-year-old?
Yeah, so I think let me elaborate on that just a little bit because I
Sure,
think
sure.
that what I love about what's in that's this given the time that was. I'm a child, I was born in the 70s, and so I was, in the 80s during that time. And mental health was such a no word. I mean, you called it a
Mhm.
nervous breakdown. You didn't even
Yep.
That's not even a clinical term.
Right. We
And
didn't talk
so,
about it.
oh, you didn't talk about it. You didn't name it what it truly was. And so, when I learned that from my mom that evening, I get latchkey kids. So, my sisters and I were always home by ourselves. But when I learned that from my mom that evening, I can remember the fear, right, that overcomes
Yeah.
you thinking, my gosh, dad wanted to die. But then sort of two things were happening after that. More stigma was overlaid. You can tell no one. If people find out,
Yep.
they'll think dad is crazy. They won't want to work with us. We could lose everything. That mindset, fast forward to where I was in my 30s, right? I could lose my career. People will look at me differently. Same message,
Yep.
different
Of course.
time. But I didn't have words for it at the time, but it was because of work. It was many of the things that I mentioned when we got started. It was high job demand. So for over 2
Mhm.
years, him and my mom had fully taken over the business that my dad, my mom, and my grandfather started together.
Mm. Mhm.
It was a 2 year where he was kind of transitioning from old to now, this is the way I'm going to do it on my own with my partners,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
So high job demand, poor support as he's trying to do three full-time jobs at one time. Again, this transition period, low
Mhm.
job control. I mean, he would wake up at 4 in the morning, go to the jobs, get the guys going. He wouldn't go to bed till 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
and then do that
Approval.
all and for a 2-year time span.
Hmm.
Silly. I mean, even though he had my mom as his business partner, baby boomer man, with all due
Yep.
respect, he didn't feel like he
Sure.
could the conversation, so felt like he was isolated. He had to provide, he had to show these things. So anyways, I share all that to say at the time, I don't even know if we had the words psychosocial risk factors. I'd have to go back. Well, actually that's not true. I should know better. Those words have been there. I don't think we had the
Yeah.
category that we, kind of have for them now, but all that to say, it was a combination of fear at that time, combination of learning stigma at that time,
Hmm.
and
Right.
then later in life being able to really say, no, no, this was because of work. And even to this day, if you were to ask him, he would flat out say, his words, not mine, I was in over my head and didn't see a way out.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can understand.
Yeah.
Well, and what's important about that and a takeaway for others is, there's a lot of small business owners, mid-sized business owners that are running their own business today as well, and they're getting ready to retire, and they're not sure how to get out or how to get help because the business depends on their knowledge, them running the business. They're so far in, they're like stuck and lost, and I think that's going to contribute to some challenges in the coming years. And we need to help people realize that you can get out of this, and there is a way, and you can ask for help.
Yeah, well, just to kind of not derail a little bit, but what you just said, I mean, when I think about it, so my parents opened this business with my grandfather when I was 5. There was no secret
Hmm.
that my grandfather was going to leave within a 7-year time span. I mean, he was close to retirement, so there was no secret
Hmm.
there.
Yeah.
But I think it's you brought up something. To me, it's the passing of the baton. We pass the baton with an expectation of, well, they already know. They know how the outside is run. They know how
Hmm.
they'll figure out the inside. Well, even if we could stay within the construction conversation, many individuals that own businesses know construction, but that doesn't mean you know business.
Right.
And I share all that to say that if we were to look at these psychosocial risk factors, one of them that falls underneath there is poor organizational change management. Well, that's
Hmm.
ultimately what was there at the time, the passing of the baton fully from my grandfather to my dad.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we gotta make sure that we really are not taking things for granted and making these assumptions, but really within this time period of understanding that a transition is going to happen, what skills are present, what aren't, what strengths are present that maybe the person before didn't have, that the person going forward, just this kind of basic stuff, but it's not basic. It's hard.
No, I think that's why we've seen a rise of business coaches in the last few years, right? Because it's the catalyst for change and for improvement. And a lot of times we don't do that unless there's someone there with us helping to make that happen.
Yeah. And then before we know it, 2 years go by and you're so in deep and you're like, I don't know what to do. And we can
Yeah,
prevent that. Yeah.
absolutely. And now you talk about workplace psychosocial risk factors, which I'm going to keep. If I bring it up again, I'm just going to say risk factors because it is a mouthful, and I'm amazed I got it right.
I'm
Talk about
convinced.
the risk factors a bit, and what do they look like on a job site?
So we'll stay in that construction arm since that's the blue collar piece that I'm really committed to. So we'll use some of the ones that I had shared, things like high job demand. So
Hmm.
when we think about construction, hours are long, right? Especially if we think about the time changes, we have to work
Hmm.
for the most part from a safety standpoint when sun is up, and then we finish when sun goes down unless we're working under light and things like that. So one, that's just length of time, but there's also the physicality behind that.
Hmm.
The human body can only take so much when it comes to the job demand, right?
Of course.
Bodies are only going to, if we're not maintaining them with strength training and all that other stuff, then bodies are only going to survive so long physically.
Right.
So job demand is kind of twofold, if you will. It's long hours, anything from 50 plus during the week or more, again, for an extended
Hmm.
period of time, and then also the physicality. So that's a big one. We see that in construction a lot. The other is the low job control. The work is the work.
Mm,
You're there to do
it
it,
is.
and it's not exciting work. It's
Right.
boring work, right? It's
Yeah.
holding the slow down sign for 8
Right.
hours, right? And what I don't think we give enough credit to is all of our brains need stimulation, need growth. And so a person can really only do that same mundane task for so long, right? Before potentially their brain just starts to say, I'm worthless. I don't have anything else to offer. So that's a big one. We talked a little bit before we got on the recording, we talked a little bit about environmental conditions. So
Hmm.
I don't think enough people realize this, but when temperatures get high, ERs actually see a higher admission of people coming in from a mental health standpoint, suicide risk, suicidal attempts. So environmental conditions such as heat is huge.
Makes sense.
These are things, we can't change the heat in
No.
the South and
Right.
in the North either. But but the South is just a little bit hotter. But we can certainly change the way we bid projects. We can put in a little extra time. We can make sure there's
True.
water. We can make sure
Right.
we can ask the guys if I can get lights and the gals, if I can bring lights to the job site and we're allowed from a noise ordinance standpoint to start at 3 a.m. Would this work for you and your families? Not you're going to be there, but would this work? So there's these little things that we can do to help minimize some of those demands. But the other ones that I haven't about yet are bullying, harassment, that still happens,
Hmm.
on
Sure.
these job sites. And it just happens at all workplaces. But those are the key ones that I would call out.
Well, and you said that, these risk factors, I mean, obviously you call them psychosocial risk factors, but employees call them just another Tuesday, which I can honestly say I've done the same thing in the supply chain world. Hey, it's just another Monday. It is what it is. Same old, same old.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's I think that's how we get ourselves in trouble a little bit and say, well, I mean, there's really nothing we can do. It's just the way it is around here.
Yeah.
No, but there are small things that we can do. Some of the examples that I just kind of gave, when I think again about the mundane, the monotonous work that you can't change when you're doing construction, because in many there's just only so high up the ladder you can climb, right?
Right. Right.
But one of the things we can do is make sure that our people know this is as far as you can go. At least tell them so
Yeah.
that when they are ready to go, you're celebrating that they're ready to go rather than making them feel bad
Yes.
about themselves for leaving,
Right.
right?
That's important.
Yes. And then again going back to things like the bullying and the incivility and the ostracism, we don't need to treat that as, well, that's just the way Bob is. I mean, everyone has
Right.
to work with Bob. No, Bob's a jerk. We need to tell him. Or we need to set up some rules of engagement in regards to how we're going to all work and respect each other on the job. So yeah, that
Yeah.
just Tuesday to me is like, no, that's BS.
When a lot of people, of course, and you've seen it a lot in construction, but I've seen it in just about any other role I've been in, is people are afraid to confront the Bob situation, the intimidation and the bullying, and or even the workload, right? How do you talk about that? What do you suggest folks do?
Yeah. So gosh, I'm gonna call it Colleen-topia, like in my magical world of if I could design it.
Yeah, sure.
I think I think first and foremost, one of the big areas of opportunity is if we could just, when we bring new individuals in to work together, one, we have to respect
Hmm.
that we all come from different learnings, different upbringings. Some of us learned how to treat each other respectfully. Some of us didn't simply because we didn't grow up in that environment, right? Good, bad, or indifferent.
Right.
That's the reality. So I think we're missing opportunities to really kind of sit down and say, how are you taught to speak to each other? What happened at the last job that you worked at? What felt good? What felt bad? So
Hmm.
I think we miss that opportunity to really kind of understand where each one of us is coming from so that again we can then figure out, okay, Bob, you can still be Bob, but how are we going to feel comfortable enough to say, dude, that's not working right now?
Yes.
Based on what we talked about prior to us all going to X, Y, and Z. So that's kind of like again, when I think about Colleen-topia. Other thing is, and my brain, of course. Can you ask me the question again? I went to that. Ask me again,
Sure.
how
It
do
was
you do that?
related to things that people can do to approach the bullying and the intimidation and the work,
Right,
the overwork. Like how
yeah,
what are some things that we can
thank you. Sometimes I just, like, stuff just flies out and then I forget what I'm talking
No,
about.
I had the same process. It happens to me all the time.
So the other thing that I talk a lot about is, again, we may not be able to change the hours of the job.
Right.
We can certainly change, this goes back to how we're treating each other. Am I saying this day is going to be really hard today? We're
Yeah.
going to make sure we're making time for breaks. We're going
Hmm.
to make sure we're watching for each other in regards to, is the heat getting to that person? Isn't it? We're going to be comfortable enough to say, hey, dude or gal, you need to go sit down.
Hmm.
And then at the end of the day, we need to thank people for putting in
Yes.
a really hard day's work.
Appreciation goes a long way.
It goes a long way. We're so focused on other things when we
Hmm.
think about reward and recognition, but the reward and recognition of saying thank you so much today sucked.
Right.
Come back tomorrow, and they probably won't run across the street for an extra buck either.
Right. My boss is treating me fairly. He's very appreciative. There are some perks to the job, but at the same time, there's a feeling of, hey, I belong here because they appreciate me. That makes a big difference.
It does. You're letting people know, one, this works is hard. I can't
Hmm.
control that, but I can certainly control how I'm going to treat you, how I'm going to
Hmm.
bring you into the mix for the solution. Again, I
Right.
gave that example of, if it's summer in Atlanta, I love this is something that my husband does a lot. If the job allows for work to start earlier when the sun isn't high and they can bring in lights, and then they finish a little bit earlier. So how are you being a thoughtful leader or business owner, even just when you're even just when you're doing the proposal?
Right. I mean, that's impactful.
It's so impactful.
Being done by noon instead of 2, 3, 4 o'clock, instead of baking all afternoon, that makes a huge difference on health, mental wellness, because, the heat stroke gets worse as you get closer into the afternoon, and, it just takes a toll.
Yeah, so to me it's these tiny little tweaks. Because again, some of these things we can't change when it comes to people's behaviors. I mean, I think we have to get get comfortable being uncomfortable and calling out and, hey, you're just being a jerk.
Yeah.
And however, if we're going to allow jerks, then we have to have rules of engagement on how we're going to be jerks.
Now you make the case that these aren't HR problems, that they're safety problems, which I can see and understand and learned a lot from talking to you about it. Why does that distinction matter, and how do you get construction leaders to see it that way?
So, so what so I want to give the kind of the back what I typically share when I say it's not an HR problem.
Hmm.
So I never want someone to get insulted or think, oh, you're coming down on HR. At the end of the day, we just have to call it what it is. HR is there for compliance. That is the
Hmm.
what the department is designed has been designed to do. And
Right.
so we can't rely on somebody that's built around compliance to then also be there for the people. That's tough. So I always want to
Yeah.
clarify that because at
Sure.
the end of the day, this is all about the entire workplace. This is not one department's responsibility. This is everyone in the workplace's responsibility. But
Yes.
the leader, the business owner, the CEO, whoever, from an operations standpoint, has to have skin in the game. Period.
Yeah.
And I mean that's it. Just doesn't work any other way. So
Right.
they have to be able to understand and see that. And then as far as safety, I mean when we think about safety, we so often think about physical safety, which we should, and that is a
Hmm.
big that. But the way we are mentally, the frame of mind we're in mentally, that is the domino effect to injury. If we're not in a
Yes.
good state of mind, I mean, even if we think about someone had a fight with their spouse the night before and they're coming to work, maybe they didn't sleep and now they're coming to work a little scattered. That mental mindset impacts their risk of getting injured on a job site. So it's
Absolutely. And yeah, not
a
just
direct
theirs, right? Everybody.
everybody. So that's really the why is that is a safety issue because of the impact that mental health has on all of us from a physical standpoint.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned a crew that lost 3 guys to suicide in 2 years, and in a lot of cases, in situations like that, nobody's talking about it. What happens to the crew that's left behind? What's that silence do to them? And I can only imagine it becomes a very lonely place.
Yeah, so what often happens is, and I think you'll hear this a lot from others that work in construction sites, is someone will come to work the next day and they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, Mike is gone. Mike took his life." And then you just go on as if again it was just another Tuesday.
Yes,
And then it's also a but if you feel like you need to go use the EAP or call, here's the number.
you're
Well,
right.
no one's gonna leave and go no one's gonna raise their hand and be like, "Yeah, I'm really bothered. This is an issue." And so what does that do? It immediately puts stigma on me. So that whole stigma conversation more of don't raise your hand, don't let anybody know. Nobody cares. We're not seen. It starts to elevate some of that, but then we don't even have the opportunity as a group to even just talk about it.
Right?
Right? I mean, it's just like we don't even get the chance to celebrate Mike, right? We don't and so it's again, it's that it's a domino effect, right? It's the negative mental impact that that has on me, which then in turn could create other challenges from a safety standpoint. So, can you shut the job down for the day? I mean, I think we can ask. He's asked the question in honor of Mike, and so it's these things that we're afraid to do. And if that means that you lose out on commissions or some of the profitability, I think it speaks volumes to the people that your
I
life.
agree. Yeah, that matters. Now, you said that blue collar workers are your people, and you mentioned that construction companies often exploit workers' vulnerabilities, criminal records, desperate for work, creating toxic environments. Makes sense. I hadn't thought about that. What does exploitation look like, and why do companies get away with it?
Oof, gosh, why do companies get away with it? And what does it look like? So, I mean, I think the unfortunate thing is you have someone with a criminal record. They don't really have a
Hmm.
lot of opportunity, sadly. And so they get thrown into like these are the jobs that are available for them. But construction jobs, this is what keeps our lights on. This is what keeps our roads safe. These are really important jobs. And so
Very.
that's one of the things that unfortunately these are individuals that are vulnerable, right? They're coming in, they've been told they're nothing. They've been treated like
Hmm.
nothing. And then we go into unfortunately construction that some of these behaviors are still pretty pretty common. And you have old guard that takes advantage of that, right? And makes that person consistently feel terrible about themselves. You're the new kid, rookie, go pick up the trash, whatever. And I mean, I can't speak for this specifically. This is just my personal opinion. I think people get away from it, or people get away with it. Organizations get away with it because a lot of construction, especially small business, they don't have HR. They're not paying for HR,
True. Yeah.
right? Kind of one thing. So again, thinking about that compliance, but also people are afraid to speak up. And so I don't even think organizations realize it's happening. But then also, I mean, the response is, well, where else are you going to go?
Right. Yes. Unfortunately. Well, and the flip side of this is another problem. Younger workers are avoiding getting into construction because of hostile workplaces, the weather, the extreme conditions, and this labor shortage can make matters worse. Mike Rowe has a full-on effort, a whole cause around that. How is the suicide crisis and labor shortage part of the same problem?
One of the things I like to say is construction the reason for the labor shortage? So to say that differently, because
Mm-hmm.
it's messy, is the environment that you're allowing. Are we looking in the mirror and saying, actually, wait, I'm the reason there's a labor shortage because I'm not willing to change. I'm not willing to try something different. So I always
Hmm.
think it's important to first, like, again, turn the mirror and look at yourself. What role are you playing in the labor shortage? And to me, it kind of goes hand in hand because of those behaviors and what the work is. That
Hmm.
again, those risk factors are tied to heightened suicide attempts, suicidal thoughts, and so I don't know. It's almost like which comes first, the chicken or the egg.
Right.
This is me just saying, like, this again, my personal opinion. Do I think the suicide risk is the reason people aren't going into it? No, because I think the risk is really more so about the environment that I'm walking into and what I'm willing to put up with or not.
Right.
And
Right.
is the construction industry willing to make a change?
True. Very important.
Does that
So
answer
you
your
talk
question?
about gratitude. Yeah, no, that's actually very good. And you talk about daily gratitude to workers. It sounds easy, small, but can something that small make a difference? I think for the last 3 years, 4 years, I found that to be very important in my day to day work. And I not only did it help me, but it helped the workers around me. What are your thoughts on daily gratitude?
So I'll bring in the nerdy research. So there actually is research that says to us these little micro moments of interruption. You can call it daily gratitude. Micro moments of interruption. Things like I mentioned a little bit earlier of what can we do to try to change these risk factors, especially if we
Hmm.
can't some of them. Things like saying, today is going to be a really hard day. At the end of the day, saying thank you so much for doing that hard work today. Today sucked. Or when someone walks into the job site for the day, good morning. How are you?
Right? How are you today?
And sticking around for
Simple.
the answer.
Yes. And actually looking them in the eye and paying attention.
Yes. So there is research that tells us that these kind of micro moments of interruption can do just that. Take someone from that haze, take someone from that thought of I'm worthless. Why am I here? They don't care if I am. And in that quick second, kind of readjust the way a person is thinking.
Yes. They need to know.
Everybody, no, maybe not, but will it
Yes.
potentially give someone an extra day and then that day can turn into 5 years? Then I think it's worth it.
Absolutely. And I know you talk about kindness is a solution. And in construction where toughness is valued, right? How do you sell kindness? Because it's important.
So I sell it by way of tying it to those micro moments of interruption and
Hmm.
safety. That's
Yes.
exactly how I try to sell it. And other things that I talked about earlier. How are we bidding jobs? Are we asking the guys if I could start a little bit earlier? Would you be willing to do this? So it's taking them into consideration when we're bidding, bringing
Yes.
water for them, and not assuming that they have the money or the means to bring that themselves. Making sure that they're
Right?
covered. That to me is kindness. That's just showing up as a good
It is.
leader.
Being a good human, you know?
Yes. That's how I'm selling it. It is 100% that safety tie by the way we're showing up for our people.
So important. And it doesn't matter whether you're in construction or if you work in an office, it applies across the board.
It applies across the board.
Now let's talk a little bit about you. You do keynote speeches and workshops and turning workplaces into suicide prevention systems. Walk me through what that looks like, and if a construction company brings you in, what changes? What approach do you take?
So as far as the keynotes that I'm typically doing that at association meetings, bigger
Hmm.
conferences, things like that. And so I'm typically talking about what we talked about in regards to these psychosocial risk factors, but I always call them work related risk factors. And
Hmm.
then what are the solutions? And again, these are these simple acts of quote unquote kindness solutions that we can overlay. One of the things I'm
Hmm.
really proud is I've been able to pull my husband in with me to serve as that case study, if you will, on stage because he's a business owner here in Atlanta, Georgia, industrial roofing. So all flat roof, commercial roofing. I'm able
Hmm.
to pull him in to do a lot of storytelling in addition to stories that I'll tell in order to back in and out of what can this look like because that's been his best perk, if you will, and his
Hmm.
work is treating people really well, and it's worked
Nice.
out really well for him. So
You
no,
had a
go
post last week. It was it last week with him in it, or it was really funny because he's like, "I don't wanna be here," or something to that
Yes.
effect, and it was very funny. It was very good.
Yeah, so we keynoted together. So that's the other kind of angle. When I'm speaking to construction companies, we also have an angle for the business owner, which ultimately the
Mhm,
way that this speech is designed is it's designed, it doesn't matter what seat you hold at the table or not. It's
mhm.
about protecting yourself and your family because I think we forget that construction workers have families.
Right.
And yes, when they're, I think we didn't talk about the isolation piece. That's a shame on me. But so, yes, when construction workers are away from their families and isolated, so is the family member. And so I have a keynote around there that I do as well. And same thing, I'm going to literally give teeny tiny things that we can do to protect ourselves and each other.
Mhm.
um, that's again from the family side, but that's the way that the keynotes are designed. They're designed to talk about these psychosocial risk factors always, and then what small, easy things that we take for granted we think are basic,
Yes.
but they're not
They're
because we're not doing them today.
No, right. They are so basic, but we just don't do them.
Right. So let's go back to the basics. If I have to hear the word innovation one more time, I think I might scream. We're not doing the basics yet. We want innovation.
Walk before we run.
Yes. That's the keynote. And then from a workshop standpoint, those keynotes can be workshopped inside an organization.
Mhm.
So helping leaders, helping middle managers, helping the employees, kind of, okay, what does it look like on the job site today? Go to the job site with them, kind of, call out areas of opportunity, help them come up with scripts in regards to how do I talk to someone? We talked about this earlier. Because people don't know what to say, and that's okay. We all have different
Yeah.
communications. So what do I say? How do I say that? So that's what that looks like.
That's interesting, and I think that's important to get the word out, and I appreciate all that you do. If someone is listening today, a construction worker, someone in a blue collar role, and they're struggling, maybe their foreman is abusive, or maybe the workload is crushing them, maybe they're thinking about suicide. What should they do? What's the first step? I mean, obviously we know, 988, but what are the other steps they can take?
Definitely 988. I'm glad you said that again. The other thing I would say is don't 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 do one. Don't do it.
Hmm.
Tomorrow can be a better day. Talk to someone, whether it's someone you trust on the job site or off, because there is 100% someone else that's going through the exact same thing that you are. So you are
One.
not alone. Yes, you do matter. You are valued. The world would not be better without you. Those are some of those constant things, right, that go through our mind.
Hmm.
So I would say start there because then the rest has to be things like, okay, how do I get out of this situation? Do I have to look for another job? Right? Those are kind of bigger things, but I would start with those immediate. Talk to someone. I don't care if it's the stranger walking down the street, someone that you don't even know,
Sure,
actually
someone.
quite refreshing. Just someone, see someone, say hello to someone, have a conversation with someone. Anything to break
Yes.
that cycle that doesn't need to be going having any ownership in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's flip it the other way. If there's someone listening that's a construction company owner, a foreman, or leadership, and they're realizing we are creating these conditions, we could be part of the problem. What's the first things that they should change? What should they start with?
The first thing that I love this question because I would say put your boots on. And if you haven't been in the field, go put your butt in the field because you have
Hmm.
an entirely different viewpoint than what your workers have. So go work side by side with them.
Yes.
Remember what it feels like to be doing the boots on the ground work. Start to build
Yes.
trust
How
with
soon
your
we
people.
forget.
How soon we forget. Start to build trust with them. Start to ask
Yes.
them where the areas of opportunity are. And then take onus on, okay, what role am I playing in this? Right? Those, just that boots on the ground work will allow you to turn your finger in and ask yourself, what role do I play? What have I been missing? What can I do better in order to then make us do better?
Yeah. It reminds me of the phrase, meet them where they are.
Meet them where they are and then pull them in with you because they have more answers than you think they do.
Absolutely. I know in my work and in podcasts and posts, I talk about choosing happiness instead of waiting for it. When your workplace is the problem, can you choose happiness or does the workplace have to change first?
I think both can happen. I think that's an and because, I mean, again, just kind of back to a little bit in the beginning, it's complicated and messy. Yes,
Sure.
we do. We are the person. So we do have a role. What can I do to better myself? What can I do to try to ask the right questions? What help can I get for myself?
Hmm.
Then that puts us, I think, in a better frame of mind for, again, how long, what can be my exit plan? What can be my exit
Sure.
strategy? Right. So
Yes.
I think it's an and.
And I listen to a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk videos, and yes, and it's almost he always says yes and instead of yes but, yes
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think that's important,
It's all that's the big improv, the big rule in improv is the power of and.
right? And it took me 45 years, almost 50 years for that one to sink in. Now you've been on both sides of this, right? Nearly lost to suicide, struggled with it, now preventing it. What's possible when a workplace actually changes? What does a mentally healthy construction site look like?
So one where I'm not afraid to open my mouth, that I feel
Hmm.
it, I'm not afraid to push back. I'm not afraid to say, hey, this isn't working, or hey, there's another way that maybe we can do this and do it better. So I'm not afraid to use my voice. And
Hmm.
two, the second thing I would say that it's a big one, I'm not going to go across the street for an extra buck because in the construction industry, a lot of people are.
Right.
But I've created a culture that is on a good foundation of mental health. Then my people aren't going to go across the street for an extra 50 cents or a dollar.
Right. They will stay.
They will stay.
They feel they have somewhere where there's a purpose. That makes a big difference.
Yeah. So those are the two things I would say.
Okay. And where can people find you and learn more about you?
So my website, colleensaringer.com. I post on LinkedIn, not as much as I used to, but I still have a voice out there. I think it's important. Yeah, those are the two key places.
Okay. And I'll make sure that those are in the show notes as well. Colleen, thank you very much for joining today. This conversation is going to save lives. It's going to impact people. It's going to make a difference. I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Now, if you're a construction company owner, a safety director, HR leader, and you're ready to turn your workplace into a suicide prevention system, please reach out to Colleen. She does keynote speeches and workshops and can make a real difference in your company. If you're in the equipment rental industry, remember that's also tied to the construction industry. The impacts are real and still the same. I know I've done a lot of work in that industry, so I can speak from experience there. And here's what I'd like you to take away from today. If you're a worker and your workplace is making you feel negative, suicidal, just mentally not there, stressed out, that's not just you. It's not weakness. Those are workplace psychosocial risk factors, and they're real, they're documented. You deserve better and you deserve to be alive. You deserve to get the help that you need. And if you're a leader and you're specialized, realizing that your workplace might be the problem, good. Awareness is the first step. Now we need you to do something about it. Change the culture, stop the intimidation, lighten the workload, adjust that schedule, check on your people, meet them where they are. It's not soft, it's life saving. And just remember, express gratitude and choose kindness. And going back to the beginning, if you're struggling, if you are having a hard time at work and mentally just not there, feeling thoughts of suicide, call 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You can text that number as well. Tell them your workplace is part of the problem. Get help because you matter far more than the workplace. It's important that you're here. Now, if this episode helped you, please make sure you like and share, subscribe. We want to reach as many people as we can and help as many people as possible. I'm Mike Orlowski. This is Mojo Motivation and Mental Health, where we're having conversations that change lives. Choose happiness and demand a workplace that makes that choice a possibility. Choose to be extraordinary and get your mojo back. Thank you.